Bullet-spitting, slug-shooting, shell-shocking, bullet-belting GUNLUGGER OGRYN is a force to be reckoned with. He's got great boss damage and laughs in the face of elite hordes. I'm assuming most of you OGRYN players have played the OGRYN melee a lot, but I wanted to show you guys a ranged build today. Something different. And it's a very competent ranged build. It puts up some crazy damage numbers, and more importantly, is good at killing high priority targets. And honestly, after using point blank barrage with a heavy stubber, there's no going back. This guide is all in context of auric damnation, though definitely applies to the lower difficulties. All of the information in this guide is based off of my own testing and experience, along with the OGRYNomicon. If you're not familiar with the OGRYNomicon, it's a very well-written guide on Steam. OGRYN players, this is your Bible. I will leave a link to it in the description and in a pinned comment. If you're an OGRYN player, I highly recommend you bookmark this and use this as a reference. So let's get this thing started. This is the GUNLUGGER. Now on the GUNLUGGER, we are building around our ranged weapon, right? So let's start with the ranged weapons. I would say your premier ranged weapon for the GUNLUGGER is the heavy stubbers. Now, all three of them are good. I would say just as a blanket statement, the Dragonum is probably the best. And this is mostly because the recoil is the most controllable, so you can actually pick off shooters. You can kind of do that on the other heavy stubbers, but it's much harder. You'll be doing a bit more damage to armored enemies, and the only thing you're really sacrificing is a bit of boss damage. This is because on the GUNLUGGER, light 'em up is your main source of boss damage, and the less bullets you are shooting, the less burns are going to be applied. So with that same logic, the highest boss DPS is the Achilles heavy stubber, which is the one that shoots the fastest, but is also the least controllable in terms of recoil. And of course, the Cork heavy stubber is the middle child. So if you want a more well-rounded heavy stubber, the gray one is definitely your best option. I think all three of them are good, with the Achilles being the hardest to handle, but honestly, the Achilles might be the most fun. I think the must-have blessing on the heavy stubber is Charmed Reload, which makes it so when you crit, you load more bullets into your clip. So if you take a little bit of crit chance, then you can just keep firing forever, basically. I find this to be important so you don't run out of ammo while you are in point blank barrage. Death Spitter is another great blessing to have. This will help you when you want to shoot things up close. But the other blessing I like to take is Inspiring Barrage. This will give you toughness while you're sitting there shooting. This will save you from taking a bunch of chip damage while you DAKKA. Although it's worth noting that you get 4% toughness every 10% of magazines spent, so the faster shooting heavy stubbers are going to get more value out of this. As for perks, you cannot go wrong with damage versus flak armor, unarmored, and maniac. All of those are going to help you kill shooters, and a lot of these specials are categorized as maniacs, so that will help you with killing specials. And you could always use some help killing berserkers. Another option is to take increased crit chance. This will help your DPS a little bit, but really it's there to proc Charmed Reload more. Now, my favorite ranged weapon for the GUNLUGGER is actually the Rumbler, the grenade launcher. That doesn't seem intuitive at first, but if you make a few small adjustments to the talent tree, which we'll go over here in a second, this build is very, very good. And I find it to be really fun because, well, the main thing you need to know about the Rumbler is that the closer the enemy is to the center of the explosion, the more damage it's going to take. That is called the epicenter. In the epicenter, enemies are taking max damage. Once they're out of the epicenter, I think the damage gradually falls off the further away they are from the explosion. So of course, the goal is to hit enemies with the epicenter. For that reason, it's important to have a high blast radius. You can see the Rumbler I have isn't ideal, but what helps me make up for the low blast radius is adhesive charge, which makes it so grenades stick to OGRYN's monstrosities, which means they're going to be getting hit with epicenter damage every single time. So for me, adhesive charge is like a must-have blessing on the Rumbler, because usually when OGRYNs show up, they are high priority targets, and it will help with your damage to bosses. I think part of the identity of the GUNLUGGER is doing high boss damage. And other than that, I almost always take Blaze Away, which again seems kind of counterintuitive. You only get one shot per clip, but this is going to boost your damage during point blank barrage quite significantly. This is what allows you to destroy groups of elites, which again is part of our identity as the GUNLUGGER class. Those are the two main ranged weapons we're going to talk about in this video. Pretty much all of the ranged weapons are good with the GUNLUGGER, the Ripper Gun probably being the next best. The Kickback is good as well, although it doesn't have as good boss damage. And the Grenadier Gauntlet is kind of okay, right? That's more for picking off shooters. but it's definitely not bad with the GUNLUGGER. So then let's talk melee weapons. If you're running a heavy stubber, you're going to want a well-rounded melee weapon, one that is good at dealing with hordes and with armored enemies. So I've found the Mark 19 shovel to be very, very good. Your horde clear combo for the shovel is going to be just spamming lights. It's not the greatest horde clear in the game, but it will definitely get the job done as a decent amount of stagger cleave. And you have a few options when it comes to dealing with armored enemies. First one being is just using the weapon special. If you need to get one big damage hit in, this is ideal for that. With this build, it will kill a crusher with 3 headshots, as long as you're using the heavy. Another option you have is push attack into heavies, or just heavies really. This is going to be better for flak armored enemies. The DPS isn't that high, but it will give you basically free headshots, to where just a push attack and a heavy will kill a gunner. So again, you're not going to do anything crazy with the shovel, but it is a nice all-rounded weapon that can deal with most situations, which is what you need on the GUNLUGGER. On your melee weapons for this build, you're going to need Confident Strike. In other OGRYN builds, right, you have a bunch of talents that are going to help you generate toughness during melee fights, but on the GUNLUGGER, we don't really have that, so we need Confident Strike. And I like to run Skull Crusher because it will help you kill armored enemies. For perks, damage versus flak and damage versus unarmored is probably going to be your go-to. I do not have that because you can also run damage versus maniacs to one-shot a mutant, which honestly is kind of a meme, but one-shotting mutants puts a smile on my face. Another great option is the Brunts Basher Bully Club. Again, a nice well-rounded melee weapon. Your horde clear combo is light 1 and 2, and then a block cancel. If you're not familiar with a block cancel, that's when you block to reset your chain of attacks. But honestly, you can get away with just spamming lights. The attack chain is really fast, and light 3 and 4 is going to give you some more kill power to your combo. Now for armored enemies, push attack light is going to be your highest DPS combo, but it doesn't have enough impact to stagger a crusher. So what you may want to do is actually start with a heavy and then go into push attack light. And the heavies do a decent amount of armor damage, so whenever you need to throw one in, go ahead and do it. Again, Confident Strike and Skull Crusher are going to be your go-tos for blessings. And for perks, damage versus infested is going to help you with horde clear. Damage versus flak is going to help you against gunners and mixed horde, but it's not a terrible idea to go for carapace. You're already good at killing carapace armor enemies, but this will help you do that a bit faster, and unarmored is always a good idea as well. The Mark IV cleaver is also a good one on the GUNLUGGER, and especially good with the Rumbler talent build. In that build, we're going to get the best defense, which is going to help you be a bit safer in melee combat, and the Mark IV cleaver is really good at proccing this, and this is because your horde clear combo has a heavy in it. You'll notice that the light attack chain has 2 stabs and then a side sweep, which is not ideal for horde clear, of course. But you can skip those first 2 light attacks by doing a push attack. If you're not familiar with push attacks, that's when you just keep holding left click after you do your push. So your horde clear combo is push attack into light heavy. And this makes the Mark IV cleaver very efficient at horde clear. Now, for dealing with armored enemies, it's important that you know using your weapon special will stagger crushers. If you get in a bad situation when you're stuck in melee with a crusher, then your combo is your weapon special, then your first heavy, and then you repeat. But your highest DPS combo versus armored enemies is going to be light 1 and 2, then heavy. And in mixed horde, or if you're fighting flak armored enemies, I've found it's best to just spam lights. Since they've changed the Mark IV cleaver, it's become a very good cleaver, and the reason we take this one over the other cleavers is that this one is a bit more well-rounded, and then it can deal with mixed hordes, it can deal with armored enemies much better than the other cleavers, and it doesn't need any of the melee OGRYN's perks to be functional. Your go-to blessings are going to be Confident Strike and Slaughterer. This is for horde clear, and again for perks, damage versus flak, unarmored, and maniacs are all good. Now for the talents, it's pretty simple. You just go straight down the right side of the tree. You want to make sure you pick up Heavyweight. This will help you against bosses and OGRYNs, of course, one of the OGRYN's best talents. And I like to take Furious, which is going to help you in melee combat because on the GUNLUGGER, you're still going to be in melee quite a bit. And the one point I give up with the heavy stubbers is the Big Boom. Now you need this one on the Rumbler to make your epicenter bigger, but on any ranged weapon that's not the Rumbler, this is just not needed. If you wanted to, I guess you could go with Bombs Away as your blitz ability, though I would generally say Frag Bomb is just better in general. Frag Bomb is basically an oh shit button. It does a ton of damage and can screen wipe. Light 'em Up is an important one to take with the stubbers. This will skyrocket your boss damage and allow you to kill crushers easily. And we have one little deviation over here, and that's mostly to get Bruiser, because the cooldown on Point Blank Barrage is 80 seconds. It's one of the longer ones in the game, And if you're playing on Damnation, you're going to be killing a lot of elite enemies, and this will vastly reduce the cooldown of your point blank barrage. Now for the Rumbler and probably the Kickback as well, I have another talent build, and the only different part really is up here at the top. Now with the Rumbler, you have a huge ammo problem. With the Rumbler, you don't necessarily want to be shooting every ranged enemy you see with it because you'll run out of ammo really quick. So to rectify that, we take a couple melee talents, and probably most importantly, we get the Big Friendly Rock. The Big Friendly Rock is going to help you in killing specials, so you're not using ammo to kill mutants, to kill flamers, and so on. And if you do run out of ammo, then you still have the Big Friendly Rock if you need it to kill something far away. You don't really need the Frag Bomb with the Rumbler because you can already screen wipe by spamming your grenade launcher. So I've found taking this way down the tree is much better for the Rumbler, and I think this also applies to the Kickback, as with the Kickback, you're really going to need the Big Friendly Rock to kill some of the far away specials and elites. And also with the Rumbler, we don't shoot enough to proc light them up enough for it to actually be worth it, so we go with Hail of Fire, and when we take Hail of Fire, our boss damage is pretty good with the Rumbler. Again, we make a little detour for Bruiser, and you do want to take Big Boom because this is going to increase the size of the epicenter. You could somewhere in here give up one of these points to take Reloaded and Ready. 12% range damage is nothing to scoff at, but I found most of these other perks fairly necessary to take. And I think that will do it for the talents. I will leave the talent build in the description and in a pinned comment, along with the weapon builds. And again, if you want a more in-depth dive to the talent trees and the gun builds, you can look at the Ogrynomicon. When approaching strategy, it's important to understand your class identity, or the role you play in a team. And on the Gunlugger, you are very good at killing groups of elites, bosses, and groups of gunners. Now, you're not necessarily good at picking off gunners one at a time because of how crazy the recoil on the heavy stubbers are and the ammo limitations of the Rumbler, so really you should be on the lookout for groups of elites and monsters. As soon as you see one of those, you step up to the plate and say, alright, it's my time. So the second you see an amalgamation of elites, you want to ult and then just start blasting away, basically. And it's important to know that Point Blank Barrage automatically reloads your weapon when you cast it. So there should be no hesitation at all when using it. And you actually want to be using it relatively frequently. Yes, the cooldown on it is long, but if you have Bruiser and you're using it to kill elites, it's not going to be very long at all. Really, your main limitation with using your ult is actually how much ammo you have. This is one of the ults that is easy to forget about once you're coasting in a mission, but you definitely don't want to do that because your DPS is going to skyrocket when you use this ult. Okay, so let's say now that you are using your ranged weapon in your ult to kill groups of elites and monstrosities. What do you do with the rest of your time? Well, number one, you want to be on the lookout for close and medium range specials. So we're talking flamers, trappers, mutants, etc. You have a easy time killing these, and you're not necessarily a special sniping focused class. You should be trying to take these out when you see them. But other than that, you have to keep in mind that you are still very good in melee combat. You have very good horde clear even though you don't really have any melee talents. So if your team needs someone to be in there in the face of the horde, that's up to you. You don't necessarily want to be in the back with your heavy stubbers shooting at hordes because it's not great use of your ammo. You're very good at horde clear and melee anyway. Only pull out your stubber or your rumbler when the horde is getting really thick and your team is not able to cut through it, because the heavy stubbers are very good at horde clear. Another thing you need to keep in mind is that Coward Coaling is going to give your team 20% damage against suppressed enemies. And that is a big damage buff, so it's not a bad idea if you're in a long range engagement to just send a few bullets at each enemy to suppress them and they'll be taking increased damage. Using your stubbers as a suppression weapon is a underrated tactic. It may not be obvious, but positioning is actually really important on the OGRYN. Mainly, you do not want to be the OGRYN that stands in front of your veteran, not letting him shoot whatever his target is. I know it's kind of a meme, but this can actually be detrimental to your team's DPS, and it's just going to make your team frustrated. So the best way to circumvent this is when you're actually shooting, you want to be behind your team. You know how in all the marketing, the OGRYN is always standing behind the rest of the team? Yeah, see, that's actually Fast Track trying to tell you how to position as the OGRYN. Okay, but really, you can easily shoot over everyone's heads, or if for whatever reason you don't have the option to be behind your team, then you want to be on a flank. The only time you want to be standing in front of your team is when you are fighting a horde in melee. Now, specific to the Rumbler build we talked about, I need to talk about how to use the Big Friendly Rock, and kind of balancing that with using the Rumbler. Now, the Big Friendly Rock one-shots mutants, flamers, and pretty much anything with a lower health pool than that, even berserkers. and your rocks regenerate over time, right? So you really want to get use out of those charges to the point where if you have more than one rock, you should be actively looking for something to throw your next rock at. It's a free kill on a specialist. I can't tell you how many OGRYNs I see just sitting there with 4 rocks in their hands and not throwing them at anything. How much value you can get out of these rocks if you're actually using them as they charge up is kind of crazy. So really, you're just using the Rumbler to kill groups of elites, bosses, and anytime there's a group of enemies that need to be carpet bombed, you use point blank barrage and start blasting away. And generally, for the rest, you can use your melee weapon. This Rumbler build has put up some of the highest damage numbers I've seen in the entire game. Like, we are talking Flame Staff Psyker levels of damage. And it's not all chip damage, it's damage that staggers. Damage on elites, which are important enemies that need to be killed. Which, to be fair, damage dealt is not the greatest stat to judge a build by, but just know that it does put up some crazy damage numbers. And with that, I think that will do it for the GUNLUGGER. If you OGRYN players have not tried this yet, I highly recommend you at least give it a go. It's a lot of fun and it's very viable. I appreciate you all spending your time, watching, listening to me talk about Darktide. Make sure you check out the OGRYNomicon. If you like the video, please like it, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.